full screen tayo and earphones on. We are already done with chapter 7. That is the last chapter to discuss service entity. In chapter 8, we would now be discussing merchandising business. Chapter 8, accounting for merchandising business. Buy and sell. A merchandising business is an entity engaged in the activities of buying and selling of products. Sometimes the business is called trading business or simply buy and sell business. The difference between a merchandising and a service entity is the existence of physical products sold to customers. Correct. Merchandising businesses sell products in order to generate revenue, while service-oriented businesses render service. So we have already given examples regarding service entities like massage parlors, janitorial services, catering services, and the like. Pagdating naman sa merchandising businesses, these are those that have tangible or physical products, and they are called, according to the next paragraph, merchandise. Okay? Normally, the entity buys goods or merchandise on a wholesale basis, either from a manufacturer or a wholesaler, and sells the same for profit. Okay? So, binili mo ng 10 piso, ibibenta mo, syempre, more than that, so that you would register a profit. The revenue of a merchandising business is called sales. Ayan. Pagdating sa service business, yung account title na ginagamit natin for income, for revenue, depende dun sa nature ng business. Pagka janitorial services, pwedeng janitorial income or janitorial revenue. Pag catering business, catering income or catering revenue. But when it comes to merchandising business, your revenue account title is usually or normally called sales. The goods that are bought for sale are reported as merchandise inventory, yan yung paninda, and are classified as current assets. However, when the merchandise is sold, their cost is transferred to an expense account called cost of sales or cost of goods sold. So tulad ng sabi natin dun sa definition ng ating kinds of businesses according to activity, pagka merchandising business or buy and sell, you buy something and you do not alter the form. You merely buy it and sell it as is. Not unlike yung ating next lesson pagdating natin sa chapter 10, pagka manufacturing business, ibang usapan naman yon. A merchandising business is also different from a manufacturing, as we have said. A manufacturing business purchases materials and transforms them into finished products. So we would not be extensively discussing this right now when we reach chapter 10 na lang. Major businesses or business activities of a merchandising business. Letter A, purchasing activity. So before you can sell, you purchase first. And then letter B, selling activities. Purchasing activities involve buying or acquisition of merchandise that is intended for resale or sale. Merchandise can be purchased either for cash or on credit or on account. The cost of merchandise purchase should include the purchase price plus all other incidental costs. Ano ba yung mga incidental costs na tinatawag? Tulad nung pamasahe nung pinabili mo. That would be accounting for freight. Later on, we'll be discussing that extensively. And letter B, selling activities. These activities refer to the transfer of the title of ownership over the merchandise from the seller to the buyer for a consideration either in money or in other things of value. So later on, pagdating natin dun sa accounting for freight, we'd also be discussing at what point will the title of ownership pass from the seller to the buyer. Okay? Account titles related to purchasing activities. Number 1, purchases. The account title purchases is used to describe merchandise bought from a supplier. So not unlike sa ating service business, kung ano yung pinurchase mo, usually yun din yung dinidebit mo. But here, if and when you purchase merchandise, the debit goes to the purchases account title. Okay? This account title is debited at the cost of merchandise bought. This account title usually has a debit balance at the end of the accounting period. Okay? Number 2, purchase returns. Goods bought and returned to suppliers are credited, okay, to this account at invoice price. This account is a deduction from the purchases account title. So, pag bumili ka and then you found out that later on it has defects and then pinayagan ka nung seller na isole yung binili mong defective, then that would fall under purchase returns. Sabi dito, it is credited to such account title. Purchase returns. Number 3, purchase allowance. allowances. Goods bought and received, defective or not as ordered when not returned to the supplier may be subject to certain reductions from their acquisition prices. These deductions from the purchase prices of the goods are credited, ayan, to the purchase allowances. So tatandaan mo yung mga sinasabi dito, credited, debited, kasi it will affect our computations later on. This account is a deduction from the purchases account. So tulad sa number 2 kanina, makikita mo is a deduction also from the purchases account. So 2 and 3 are deductions sa number 1. Okay? Deduction din yung 3. When returns and allowances on purchases are insignificant, pwede mo daw pagsamahin yung 2 at saka yung 3 in one account title. Purchase, returns, and allowances. Anong pagkakaiba ng 2 at saka sa 3? Sa 2, sinoli mo yung product, yung defective product. Sa number 3, hindi mo sinoli. So instead na isoli mo, sabi mo dun sa supplier, mahirap pagka sinoli. Pwede bang bawasan mo na lang yung presyo? That would be purchase allowances. Okay? Number 4, freight in. If the buyer pays the expenses in transporting the goods from the place of the seller to the place of the buyer and such is required by the contract, such expenses are debited to freight in. Okay? This is an addition to the purchases account. Remember, 2 and 3 are deductions to number 1. Okay, number 2, number 3 are deductions to number 1. Number 4 is an addition to number 1, freight in. More on this later on, as we have said, when we discuss freight accounting. Number 5, inventory, merchandise inventory. At the end of every accounting period, a physical count of the unsold merchandise on hand is taken. The total amount of these goods on hand is debited to the merchandise inventory account. So, pagdating dito sa ating merchandising business, tulad ng sabi natin kanina, yung ating pinamimili, okay? Yung ating binibenta is called merchandise. It is debited to the so-called merchandise inventory account. Number 6, purchase discount. If a buyer pays within the discount period allowed by the seller, a discount is granted. This discount is, konting correction, it must be credited, ayan, to the purchase discount accounts. Okay? So forgive this. This is simply a typographical error, a matter of copy and paste, tsaka hindi napalitan. So, pasensya na. This must be credited and not debited. Okay? Next. Account titles related to selling. So, these are the new account titles that we encounter dito sa ating merchandising business na hindi natin na-encounter sa service business. Kaya ini-introduce sa atin. Pagdating naman sa selling activity, pagka nakabili ka na and you're ready to sell the merchandise, okay, some of the more prominent account titles which were not previously encountered, number 1, sales. When teachers like me teach in front of a live audience, we derive satisfaction to some extent from the interaction with students. Yung mga simpleng pagtawa mo sa mga jokes namin, they mean something to us. They make us happy. But teaching in front of the camera is a different thing. We don't even know if you're there. We don't even know if you're listening. So, a simple like dun sa ating video or a simple present, sir, nandito po kami, nakikinig. We are watching, sir, will inspire us. When teachers like me teach in front of a live audience, we know that you're there. But teaching in front of the camera is not merely sharing our content. It means sharing our time, our devotion, and above all, our passion. So, yung simpleng pag-subscribe mo sa amin, it lets us know that you are there and we are here to continue what we are doing. So, ngayon pa lang, nagpapasalamat na kami. Diyan sa yung subscription, it inspires us. It inspires me to wake up every morning, prepare discussion materials, and continue what I am doing. So, thank you so much. Please continue sharing and liking and subscribing. Thank you. Sales of merchandise are recorded in this account at selling prices. Meaning to say, cost plus yung markup mo. That is your selling price. This is a nominal account falling under the income statement or statement of profit or loss, representing income from the selling of merchandise. This account is credited. It has a normal credit balance when merchandise is sold. Number 2, sales returns. This account is debited for all merchandise returned by customers. The amount debited is at the original selling price of the merchandise returned. So tulad kanina, nung nagpa-purchase ka at may isinaoli ka dun sa seller, ang tawag purchase returns. Ngayon at ikaw naman na yung nagbibenta at may isinoli yung customer sa'yo, ang tawag doon sales returns. So take note, sales have normal credit balance. Sales returns have normal debit balances. Okay? And they are deducted from the sales account. Number 2 is a deduction from number 1. Remember these treatments. Okay? Number 3, sales allowances. When goods delivered to a customer are found to be defective or not as ordered, the purchaser desires to retain. Ayaw lang isole kasi siguro hassle pag binalik pa sa'yo. And the goods are retained as is. The customer may ask for a reduction from the selling price. So just the same kanina. Nung ikaw yung bumili, ayaw mo nang isole, pinabawasan mo lang yung presyo, ang tawag purchase allowance. Ngayon naman, ikaw yung nagbibenta, hindi na sinoli sa'yo, binawasan mo na lang yung presyo para tapos ang usapan. Ayan, sales allowance na ang tawag sa number 3. And tulad sa number 2, it has a normal debit balance. It is a deduction also from the number 1, yung sales account title. Okay? If and when number 2 and number 3 are insignificant in amount, pwede na daw natin pagsamahin yung dalawa under the account title sales returns and allowances. Okay? Number 4, freight out. If the seller pays the purchases in transporting the goods to the place of the buyer and such is required by the contract, such an expense is debited to freight out account. Yung freight out na account title, it is a selling expense. Meaning to say, it is considered in the determination of your net income later on, dun sa ating income statement or statement of profit or loss. Okay? Number 5, sales discount. Discounts granted to the customers for early payments. Yung kinds of discounts, discuss din natin later on. Of their accounts is debited to sales discount. Debited to sales discount. Okay? Normal balance is debit balance. It is also a deduction dun sa ating number 1. So number 2, 3, and number 5 are deductions to the number 1 sales account title. Okay? Accounting for purchases. Merchandise bought is accompanied by a business form called purchase invoice. An example of a purchase invoice is shown below. Pangasinan Wholesaler, 152 Perez Boulevard, Dagupan City. Date, January 3, 2020. Sold to Zamora Trading, the address of which is Calasiao, Pangasinan. Terms, 2/10 and over 30. So ano kayang ibig sabihin nitong 2/10 and over 30 na yan? So later on, di-discuss din natin yan. Men's shoes, 2,000 pesos daw, 10 pairs. Yung unit price, 2,000. So, amount, 20,000. Women's shoes, unit price, 600. 50 pairs. So, 30,000. Total sales, 50,000. Total amount due, 50,000. So, yung VAT dito na 12%, ignore muna natin. Although later on, we'll have a discussion on value-added taxes. Okay? If the purchase is made on account, it is recorded in the General Journal as follows. So, very simple. On account, debit purchase 50,000. Credit accounts payable dash Pangasinan Wholesaler for 50,000. Pagka naman for cash, edi ang credit mo instead na accounts payable, it would be credited to cash immediately. Okay? Accounting for purchase returns and allowances. When merchandise bought is returned or an allowance is requested, the buyer informs the seller in writing. The communication is done through the buyer's printed form called debit memo. Yan. If the return is accepted or the allowance is granted by the seller usually sends the buyer such acceptance or grant in writing through a printed form called credit memo. Pagka nagbenta, okay, take note, you listen. Pagka nagbenta yung seller doon sa buyer, ano ang journal entry nung seller doon sa book niya? The journal entry is debit accounts receivable, credit sales. Okay? Debit accounts receivable, credit sales. Because usually, class, a business is usually done on account. In the real world, malamang sa hindi utang yan. So, debit accounts receivable, credit sales sa books ng seller. Sa books naman ng buyer, okay, ang journal entry niya would be debit purchases, credit accounts payable. Ngayon, kung magre-request ka ng return at pinayagan ka ng seller, sabi sa'yo, sige, balik mo. Pumapayag ako. Aminado naman ako na defect yung ibang units na naipadala ko sa'yo. So, pagka ganun ang sitwasyon, ibig sabihin, pumayag yung seller, sasabihin ng seller sa'yo, sige, sabi niya, yung payable mo sa akin dyan na naka-credit sa books mo, i-debit mo na. Ayan. para mabawasan yung payable mo sa akin, sabi ni seller. And in turn, ako naman na seller, i-credit ko yung receivable ko sa'yo. So yung debit accounts receivable niya, credit sales, naka-debit na accounts receivable, i-credit niya para mababawasan yung collectible niya sa'yo. Kaya credit memo ang tawag at debit memo naman. Ayan. Okay? Upon the receipt of the credit memorandum, the buyer makes an entry for returns or allowances. Here we have an illustration. Okay? To illustrate, assume the following transactions. January 10, 2020, Dagupan Trading bought merchandise from Manila Manufacturing Company for 25,000 on account. January 15, 2020, Dagupan Trading returned merchandise with the cost of 1,000. This was accepted by Manila Manufacturing Company by issuing a credit memo to Dagupan Trading. The journal entries to record the foregoing transactions in the General Journal of Dagupan Trading are as follows. January 10, 2020, debit purchases, credit accounts payable, Manila Manufacturing Company. On January 15, nung pinayagan siya na magsole ng merchandise, the debit was accounts payable, which was previously credited, okay? 1,000 credit purchase returns and allowances. So, tulad ng sabi natin kanina, later on, this credit to purchase returns and allowances would be a deduction to the purchases account item. If the purchase of merchandise was made on cash basis, the journal entries in the General Journal of Dagupan Trading are as follows. Then it would have been debit purchases, credit cash, at pag isinauli, then tatanggapin naman natin yung cash, kaya naka-debit sa cash. Credit purchase returns and allowances. However, if the cash equivalent was not refunded upon return, the journal entry for the return would be as follows. Debit accounts payable, credit purchase returns and allowances. Okay? Next, accounting for discounts on purchases. In purchasing of goods on account, there are two common types of discounts encountered. First, trade discounts. Second, cash discounts. Trade discounts are deductions from the list prices of merchandise offered to promote sale. A list price may be subject to one or more trade discounts. Trade discounts are not shown in the books of accounts and are usually expressed in whole numbers, that is, in percentage of the list price. Where two or more trade discounts are offered, this should be computed in a series of computations. So we will show you later, shortly, kung paano ba siya i-compute, kung paano siya i-consider. Cash discounts are special deductions from purchases of goods bought, granted by the seller to the buyer to induce the buyer to pay within a specified period. So, taking it this way, pag sinabing trade discount, sali ka na suki, bumili ka na sa akin, bibigyan kita ng discount. Trade discount ang tawag doon. O pagka naman napapasok mo na yung customer, pwede mo uli siyang alukin ng another discount. Magbayad ka ng maaga suki, bibigyan uli kita ng discount. Cash discount naman yun. So, magkaiba yung motivation. Pagka cash discount, in order to induce the buyer to pay promptly or earlier. Okay? Ayan. Cash discounts are called purchase discounts on the part of the buyer and sales discount naman on the part of the seller. Ang sabi dito, usually expressed in fraction. So, na-encounter na natin kanina dun sa may invoice. Okay? Hindi lang natin diniscuss. Later, i-discuss natin. Ito, pagdating dito. Cash discounts are computed on the billed amount less returns and allowances, if any. Discounts are never allowed on incidental expenses like freight, yung pamasahe ng merchandise, taxes, duties, insurance, and other charges. Whether a discount is allowed on partial payments or on non-cash settlements will depend on the agreement. Depende na daw sa usapan, okay? Okay, class. So that's the bell already. That's it for this meeting. So, ganun-ganun lang, class. A few minutes of your time every day, imbis na kung ano-ano yung pinapanood mo, just make it a habit to watch our videos bilang tulong na rin dun sa sarili mong pag-aaral. Why? Kasi tatandaan mo, hindi lahat ng nababasa mo ng mag-isa ay maririnig mo. At hindi din lahat ng mga naririnig mo ay mababasa mo. Tulungan yan. So with that, see you in our next meeting. See you in the next lesson.